Hi everyone, my name is Elin Bergman and I'm the COO and spokesperson of the Circular Economy Network CreatelNet, and also I'm a co-founder and managing partner of Nordic Circular Hotspot.
And hey everybody, my name is Anders Jepsen. I am co-founder of NORNORM and CEO.
And hello, I'm Annabelle. I'm here to facilitate, and here we're going to talk about all things on circular economy. So let's just get into it. How would you first, obviously there's a bit of a knowledge gap at the moment between like what circularity is, whether it's sustainability or like how they connect and what's the difference. So how would both of you define circularity?
Who should go first? Should I go first?
Yeah, you go first. You're the expert.
Well, I always start in the economy that we currently have, which is a linear economy, and it's unsustainable. And the reason for that is that we base the whole economy on us consuming a lot of things, and those things are made in an unsustainable way with fossil fuels and fossil energy and fossil materials. And we design them so they don't last very long, bad quality things. So we can use them up and they break just when the warranty goes out to make us throw them away and buy new stuff. So it's and we're doing that in an ever increasing speed, which means that we're not only destroying the planet, the environment, but also we're running out of materials. And the circular economy is something totally different. It's when we kind of mimic the natural cycles of nature. Where we don't have waste. There's no waste in nature, where we try to make things that last for such a long time as possible, high quality, and keeping the value of the things and the materials as long as possible. And then when we make these high quality things, they last for a long time. They're supposed to also be designed to be maintained, upgraded, repaired, upcycled, and so on. But once they're kind of worn out, they're supposed to cycle back into the economy again. So we can use them again or the materials again and again and again in like a natural system. So that's the circular economy for me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You could say I come from the application and trying to apply this in business and in the area of workspace. And for me, it's very much about that we find models where we can operate within the boundaries of the planet. And we do that by eliminating waste through constant reuse of the resources in a circular loops. So constantly taking it back and really from the beginning and the outset, thinking about what are we going to do once this product doesn't serve its original purpose, and in that way, reducing waste and
you can describe circular economy in so many ways. I can talk about the regenerative business models, and I can talk about the product as a service business models. I mean, but that's like a 5-day long program, I think.
Well, maybe that segues us into our next point of like what is circularity in terms of specifically a service business model?
Well, I can start. I think for us, it's about when you walk away from the linear product model where you're focused on fast profits, you have an alternative which takes you into more of a circular model that often is connected to a service component to it, because you will be taking and keeping ownership of the products in many cases. So I think circular economy and service models are very closely associated. They don't have to be, depending on how you view your contribution in the entire value chain. But the total value chain for it to be circular needs to be considered in a closed loop, and therefore there will be a service element to it.
And like I said, there's so many business models in the circular economy, but the product as a service business model has been kind of talked about as like the one business model that will kind of rule them all or be the best one for the circular economy. The problem is, though, that many have tried and failed, and many have tried and succeeded. So we did a project together with Stena Circular Consulting that just ended. Actually, it was a 2-year program or project that got EU funding, where we looked at what's the problem when people are trying this or companies are trying this. Why do they fail when they fail, and why do they succeed when they succeed? So we came up with 9 critical challenges, And we kind of also developed this methodology, like this is what you should do so you don't fall into the same pitfalls as the one that didn't succeed. And we even developed this methodology so you can follow it step by step. And it's open source and it's online, so everybody can just download it for free and use it. And we even made this together with a lot of pilot companies that kind of tried this out. So now we'll see if we actually were right or not, and see if they succeed.
Really cool. Do you have any specific takeaways from that you can share?
Well, like Anders said, sometimes when you stop selling things and you kind of lease them out or rent them out, or you kind of make the use of them easier without you selling them, it could sometimes be more costly in the beginning. So it takes a while to get the profit, so to speak, which is a big problem because banks don't really know how to evaluate these type of business models. So we also need to teach the financial institutions on how to evaluate them, and also give them loans so they don't get the money back in 2 or 3 years. Maybe they need 10 years because it's a totally different way of doing business, but it actually gives you more profit in the end, but it have to take a longer time. So that's one of the things that we learned.
I think from you could say we started out in NORNORM 3 years ago, and we had the great fortune of starting from a blank piece of paper. So we could really start out, and I think that's one of the keys. I think that you put aside what you've been doing for and optimizing and learned in the past, and just say, if we were to do this in a way where you know you are going to take responsibility of a bigger part of the value chain, and not as many companies today, they sit in a linear product model focused on fast profits. How can they get as much profit out by doing as little and taking as little responsibility as possible in the value chain? The circular service models are total opposite. There you need to look at the total end-to-end perspective and see how can that entire system generate profit, and what is my contribution into that. And I think you would often find that it's impossible for you to take the full responsibility. So you need to think about much more holistically and much more collaboratively about how to succeed with the business model. Whereas in the linear, you think very sort of egoistically and very short-term and isolated. That's I think the total paradigm shift you need to have from a business point of view and how you think about your business.
And kind of adding to that is also the beautiful thing about circular economy is not about how can I sell as much as possible to you as a customer, but it's actually stemming from the needs that people have. We don't really have the needs to own a lot of furniture or cars or houses or whatever. We have the need of transporting ourselves from point A to point B, to using furniture, to having a roof over our heads and security and things. So what's the need we have? Is it ownership? No, usually it's not. So it's a different way of thinking.
I think to build on that, and I think it's really also about seeing it as a huge opportunity to create more of a value-adding product to the users, right? If you think of, in our case, businesses are buying furniture today. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense from their financials. It doesn't make sense from the employee's point of view, because they're locking themselves into a fixed solution that they can't change, despite that their needs are changing constantly. So in the circular, you actually have a chance to offer it as a service where they can change as they grow or shrink or adapt it to their needs constantly. So not only is it circular, but that's maybe secondary. For some, they don't care about it, and that's fine. But it's actually a better product because you're not locking yourself in. And as you say, Elin, there's no need for the ownership. And actually, if you ask yourself, it's a very sort of backwards looking. Generations ago, you felt when you own it, then you have more control or prestige or something like that. I think that the generations to come, they would not look at it at all that way. And that's why I think this whole transition we're about to see is going to be complete paradigm shift into how business is conducted in the future. This is going to be bigger than what I started out in my career. Internet was a big thing, right? That was the thing that everybody's looking for. That's going to change everything. Maybe it did, but this is much, much bigger, is my clear view. And it's going to revolutionize what the business in the generations to come.
And also speaking from like a personal view, I saw science saying that a general household in the United States, they own 300,000 things. And in Europe, Northern Europe, it's 50,000 things. So that means actually the things own us. We can't travel as we want to. We can't like move around. We can all be, or many of us can at least be digital nomads, but we can't because we have so much stuff that just kind of, weighs us down.
But I think that kind of also segues into going from what you both said about like aligning circularity and also like running a business. Like at the end of the day, businesses need to be profitable, and like how do you build a symbiosis between those two things?
I think for me personally, this is the key, and I think too often circularity and environmental models and ambitions are coming either at a premium or it is something that is not making profit. I think for this to be really a transformational success, we need to demonstrate that we can make even more profit and an even more attractive business model out of the circular economy than is what the linear is. If that can be proven, we will see a huge transition. Then everybody's going to move to it. The problem is there are too few, if any, examples of that today. But we need to secure that it is circular, but it's also highly profitable. And that's what we are trying to do here with NORNORM, to start in an area that we think is easy or possible as an inspiration to fuel this.
I always use Spotify and Netflix as really good examples, or Airbnb sometimes, because nobody wants to go back to like renting a DVD at the video store or like buying a CD at the CD store, because that's such a crappy thing. Now we have all the movies and all the music that we want and need whenever we need it in our phones. Amazing. That really made a super difference, and just our lives so much better and easier. And if we think about like how can we make the furniture like that, but you kind of already did, but like disrupt all the sectors like that. What type of society will we live in? I think it would be so much cooler and easier, and we don't have to be owned by all the stuff that we have.
Yeah, I often use the example of the electrification of society that we're seeing right now. I think the car industry, sometimes we get it wrong that they didn't know what to do to make the transition towards the electrification of cars. And that's simply not true, right? At the turn of the 19th century, of 1900, there were far more electrical cars than there were petrol cars. So it actually is a very old invention. But nobody wanted to make the shift until they had to. And they had to make a shift when Tesla came around and created a superior product at a comparable price point that was also good for the environment. And when you get that point, then all of a sudden you saw them be very creative. And of course they were going to shift and they were just about to do it. So it's not a matter of penalizing, I think. It's a matter of having a carrot that you can show that this is the way to go, and then everybody wants to be in on it. But we need to create the breakthrough successes desperately and quickly to really to support this movement.
100%. So leading on from that, what tips or advice, like how can other companies follow suit and start making this transition?
So one way they can do it, well, actually everybody needs to change now, because the European Union is forcing everybody to not only disclose and report on, what carbon emissions they have, biodiversity, water, marine resources, and also circular economy. So everybody needs to really get their value chains in check now. So once you're doing that, you will find a lot of waste streams that you have. So everybody needs to start reporting on circular economy, which means also you find a lot of waste streams in your value chains. And those waste streams are actually precious resources that someone else can use as materials for their products, probably. So we need to all know this, and then you can start to see what type of business can I make out of this? But the best thing would be if you already started, because everybody knew that this was coming. So the faster you get going with this, the better. You will be the winner in the transition, because otherwise other ones will come and do it for you. or before you?
I would say I have three. If you talk about businesses that are considering how they can tap into this, I have three things that I would highlight. One would be to start from a blank piece of paper, basically. Make sure that you create a standalone entity and freedom to rethink what you're doing. And see where is it really you can add value with the prerequisites the circular service model has to offer. So really rethink your business model entirely from scratch. Secondly, make sure you have the context properly set up for the success. I worked 15 years in IKEA where this idea was first initiated. But it was not until I got the okay to start this as a separate company with no influence, no dominating say from IKEA that actually we took and had the courage to do it. Because if you're part of, if you coexist with a linear model, I think that's impossible because you will gravitate towards the profitability and the quick profits and the old ways of thinking in the linear all the time. So you got to have the context ready. And the big prerequisite here is the financing. You talked about it from the banking sector. I think that the banking sector needs to completely be revamped in what is their role in the circular transition, because that's a total rethink. And if you don't have that in place, it's going to be very difficult for you. And the last thing is to think holistically and not try and do everything yourself, but think of this as a partnership, an ecosystem where you're leveraging technology. So we were fortunate to being in an industry, real estate, architecture, etc., where tech is not used at all. It's such a conservative industry that we could disrupt just with the tech, but using tech as a facilitator for making those partnerships flow much more easily, to integrate between the businesses that will all be contributing to making the circular loop, but not making the mistakes of thinking you need to do everything yourself, because then it's going to be an overwhelming and not very appealing case you're going to bring forward to the decision makers. But I'm curious, Elin, to hear a bit more about those 9 points. If some of them were amongst the 9, or if there are additional some things that you have.
No, but I heard exactly what you said now too. That I think it was Peter Algren from RISE who said that before. That like it's better to start your own new business with and start that, make it like 100% circular or like a born circular, than actually try to make your already linear business circular. It's almost impossible. So I totally agree.
But can I ask a question maybe also to you,
Sure.
Elin? What are if you see any good examples out there, besides us obviously, but what are good examples and what are needed for creating more momentum in this, more of a breakthrough?
No, I think what's happening right now with the EU, when we have the taxonomy and CSRD setting regulatory reporting, mandatory reporting for all companies. It starts with the large companies next year, and then the mid-size and the small companies, and then even companies that are exporting to the European Union. It's going to be like the best that's ever happened. It's going to affect the planet. It's going to be a global shift. So that's the strongest thing that I'm seeing right now that will have the largest impact. But then it's kind of been trends going on in this, with like companies that start moving. So it started with IKEA and H&M. They kind of shift the furniture and the textile sector, and then we had circular IT companies coming, and now we have a lot of members in that field, like Inrego and Foxway, for instance. Foxway is now like a circular unicorn company. It's going really, really well. And now we see construction coming, and I think food will be the big disrupting market for circular economy next, especially regenerative farming. I think it's going to be like the next new organic, but better. If that answered your question. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's... But I think there is also the distinguishment, I think, between circular activities or creating the prerequisites for circularity and then doing actual circularity. And that's where I sometimes feel many businesses are trying to make their contribution, in designing maybe products that are enabling circularity. by them being easy to renovate or easier to renovate. The problem with those models, I think, is twofold. First of all, I think companies are greenwashing themselves and claiming that they are circular because they have created those products. The second part is that nobody is securing that that actually is happening, and taking responsibility for it. And then you often end up with having actually used more resources to create the product that are then wasted anyway. So you're even doing something that's worse for the planet. How do you view that?
Well, I get a lot of people contacting me since I'm kind of like this circular influencer on LinkedIn now. So they say, oh, I have this new product that I want to, run by you. And I try to listen if I have time, because it's always good for me to get good examples and things. And for instance, we had was one company the other week that contacted me, and they're taking plastic waste, the waste we can't really recycle, and they actually recycle it, which seems really good. And they make plastic pallets out of them, which is really good too. I mean, could be better used for pallets because they kind of sheaf off and they kind of become microplastics. I think it should be things that are not so wear and tear intense. But anyway, and it sounded really good. They're much better than wood pallets because you can only use them a fewer times and so on. But in the end, they burned these pallets when they were worn out, and it's like, but it's not circular, it's half circular. You can't burn the material in the end because you destroy it. You have to find another thing to make the material last, otherwise it's not circular. And this happens all the time, over and over again. It's like, yeah, maybe they make it circle it 3 times or so, but it's like you have to do something, the material in the end, and there's no actual end, but it's so usually when I say that, they're like, oh no, they haven't really thought it through. So I think it's the problem with that is companies are trying, but they still don't see that they don't have enough knowledge yet. So we need to keep teaching how it's supposed to be. I mean, and yes, it is better to circulate them many more times, but it's not enough. We need to make it truly circular in the end.
Yeah, I find that it's a bit in the application that we are losing out, because all the companies we speak with, all the suppliers of furniture, they're looking into what they call sustainable products. But it doesn't matter if that product is made out of ocean regained plastic, if it is dumped back into the ocean, or if it's incinerated, which we know that 99% of our goods are. And then I think it's almost better not to go down that route. I would rather have that they just are honest and saying, we don't believe in this, or we don't have the resources or the bandwidth to do it. At times I can get frustrated when they even talk about sustainable products, because that is a contradiction of terms. You can't have a sustainable product. You can have a product that has a bigger or smaller footprint and environmental impact. But per se, we got to get over that thinking and start to talk about how do we make the life length become generations rather than months and weeks and fashion and all these kind of things. And I found very few, if any, good examples of companies out there. I
have a fantastic company that's one of my members. They're called Accus. They make circular signs, signs to put on buildings for companies or schools and they have been working a long time with making the signs circular, so they take the materials out of buildings that are supposed to be torn down, like the plating on the walls and so on. Make signs of that, and they've been selling them first, but now they were one of our pilot members in the product as a service project, so now they're also trying this as a service, but they're even going further. So now they when they get like a public procurement offer, like to sell 5 signs for a school, for instance, they don't just say, okay, yes, we will sell you 5 signs. They will actually send out a person that looks at that school, make their own evaluation and say, no, we would look at this school. We would love to do this for you, but we will only sell you 2 signs because you don't need more. So that's the only thing they will sell. And that kind of it seems strange because every company is supposed to sell more. But they get more. They sell more because this school will say to the other schools around, hey, if you're going to buy signs, or actually you don't buy the signs, you only lease them or whatever, but still if you're going to get signs, get them by Accus, because they saved us so much money. And they didn't try to push us 5 signs even though we didn't need it. So they actually sell more because of this. So refusing is one of the best things you could do, because if you know that things that you can sell is not needed, why do you need to sell it? This is the big problem in society today. We are selling too much crap that nobody actually needs. And so that's why we also should really look at the need. What do we really need? So.
And I think that's a good example, of course, that they have tried to look at the value add and selling, instead of selling signs, they are selling navigation, right? They're selling the service of having people navigate seamlessly through a school. And then it doesn't matter. They should have as many signs as needed, but they will be then, if that's your model, you, of course, will try to minimize the amount of product put out there, because that's cost to you. But of course, you want to have a good service. And I think that's the best way to assess any business model. Follow the money. Look at if the business model inherently is so that the more resources you push out there, the more money you make. Then you have a linear model and you are not in a circular space. But if you have a model where actually the more material you put out there to get your revenues, the less you make, then you have probably something that is circular. You can say the more chairs and stuff we put out there, given we have the same price for the service, the less money we're making. So we're super aligned with nature in not taking more than we need. And that is the biggest, the quickest way to assess if there's greenwashing involved in the business model, I think.
Absolutely. I think it's very hopeful now, because the COP28 meeting is going on in Dubai, and they're finally talking about, like, we should really tax the things that are bad for the planet, and kind of, if we overstepping the planetary boundaries, then it should be extremely expensive. And this is the way to go about things. Otherwise, we can't fix this big problem that we have.
Yeah, I think that is a key element to it. Unfortunately, I don't think that's enough, because you're going to end up with the wealthy part of the world continuing to consume, and you're going to create a lot of friction and divide in society, and who can afford what and who can't. And you're going to rob people a chance to have a decent life if that is taken to its extreme. So I think it's a step, but I think we fundamentally need to redesign the business models. There need to be a way where we need to design models where it doesn't matter how many. You get to a point where you kind of create. It doesn't matter how many chairs you're using, because they're all going to come back anyway. So it's actually not really having that bigger impact on the environment if you're consuming a bit more. If you find models where that is through innovation, then I think we're getting where we need to be.
I absolutely.
But that's a long journey.
Yeah,
and,
I agree, but I think taxing things, because usually the money is the things that historically has shifted a lot. But I totally agree. And also we need to ban all the bad stuff. It shouldn't be around, so you can buy them from the beginning. So, but that's another big thing. I strongly believe in legislation, because this is what, even if the policymakers would do the right things according to science and according to, living within the planetary boundaries, we wouldn't have this problem. But it's also, they're not really. It's too short-term thinking and acting, I think.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you both for a really good chat. That feels like a nice, solid round off. Is there anything like closing statements that you want to say before we drop off?
I'm inspired with hearing what you're doing, Elin, and I really look forward to seeing and getting more knowledge sharing going. So keep it up, and hopefully we will create a breakthrough as well that you can talk about, and thereby we can be an inspiration for many to follow what we two are trying to do.
Yeah, and we already are inspired by you. That's why we invited you to the Nordic Circular Summit and come and speak. So we hope we do more things in the future. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.